Kia ora and welcome to the next in our Need to Know Assurance Update series. We have a few people joining, but I think we'll kick off because we do have a full agenda. My name is Misha Peters and I am the Director of Assurance here at the XRB. For this session, I'm joined by Karen Tipper, Technical Director, Lisa and Sharon, our Senior Project Managers, and Anna, one of our Project Managers. Unfortunately, Bruce McNiven is away on holiday. Well, lucky for him, unfortunate for you, but he'll be back in due course to tell you more about some of the projects that he has been working on. So if we can maybe change slides. Yep, so what are we going to be covering today? We are going to give you an overview of some of the standards that are applicable pretty much from the end of this year. It's just a reminder. We'll give you an overview of some of the feedback that we've heard on recent consultations that we've had in the direction of travel. And then we'll give you a sneak peek into some things that you can expect to see soon. Today's webinar is recorded, so there will be a recording available on our website in due course. The slides from today's session will also be made available on the website, so no need to scribble it all down. If you do have any questions, please do drop them in the chat. We may run out of time to get to all of those within the 45 minutes allocated for the webinar. We'll do our best to try and get to them, but if we don't, we'll make sure we get back to you by way of email. Right, so without further ado, let's get going and start looking at some of the applicable standards that you'll have to be applying pretty much from December 2024. So we have issued over a number of months, a number of standards which are listed on the slide. The exact applicable date you'll have to refer to the standards for. But what I really wanted to highlight here is if you have financial years ending in December 2024, so when you're doing these audits from January, these are the standards that have been revised that you will need to be applying. Those relate to changes to the group auditing standards and attach changes to the definitions in the Code of Ethics relating to engagement teams and group audits. And Anna will give you a reminder about some of those changes in due course. We also have a domestic standard, SAE 3450. So if you're involved in the area of doing assurance attached to a client that has a capital raise, this might be relevant to you. It's a new standard. It is specific to the New Zealand context, but it is similar to a version of the standard in Australia. The final two standards listed here, we have covered in most of the recent need to knows. So we're not going to do a deep dive into these two standards, but a reminder that the revised standard on on service performance information will also apply from December 2024. And the temporary standard for climate reporting entities that are required to disclose their greenhouse gas emissions, NZSAE1, is also applicable. Okay, so that's just a very quick update. What I wanted to do now is hand you over to Anna, who will talk you through the group audit changes. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Misha. So the first standard that we would like to remind you about is ISA 600 revised, special considerations, audits of group financial statements. So this standard is applicable for periods beginning on or after 15 December 2023. And just a reminder about four main areas that revisions are what was included in the revisions to the standard. The first one is risk-based approach. This means that group auditors should focus on designing and performing audit procedures that respond to assessed risk of material misstatement, both at the group and at the component level. It also means that a group auditor has flexibility to look beyond the legal structure when they plan and perform the audit. This is important, especially in the current environment when the groups are quite complex, when information systems are shared by several components in groups, or when there is increased use of shared service centers. Additionally, also entities with branches or divisions whose financial information is included in the financial statement of the entity, they are also included in the scope of this standard. The revisions have also increased focus on importance of two-way communication between the group auditor and component auditors. The standard clarifies various aspects of interaction, communicating relevant ethical requirements, determining competence and capabilities. Component auditors are now explicitly part of the engagement team. The group engagement partner needs to be appropriately and sufficiently involved in the work of the component auditors so that they can determine whether significant judgments and conclusions are appropriate. Professional skepticism is another important focus area of the standard. All members of the engagement team need to be professionally skeptical through the group audit. The standard provides some examples. For example, component auditors might operate in different locations and be subject to varying cultural influences, and this might affect the nature of their judgments and their bias. Another example is when group management imposes tight reporting deadlines. This may put a lot of pressure on the engagement team, and in these circumstances, it is even more important to take additional time to appropriately question management assertions, to review judgments or review the audit work performed. And the fourth area is increased documentation requirements. It also includes a requirement to document any restrictions that were imposed on access to people or information within the group, and how these matters were addressed. Group auditors may now decide that they can summarize or replicate or retain copies of certain audit documentation from component auditors. This is to supplement the matters that are discussed between group and component auditors during the increased communication during the audit. So I think these are the four areas that I wanted to talk about, and now I will pass to Karen.
Thank you, Anna. So today I wanted to start by talking to you about a consultation that you may have seen over the past few weeks, and that actually closed yesterday. So we've been hearing from a few sources that many CREs are facing challenges with obtaining reliable data, and also how to disclose in the absence of comprehensive guidance. There were also concerns that we heard about obtaining assurance over Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions disclosure. And this we heard was due to difficulties in obtaining sufficient reliable data from up and downstream entities across the value chain. So accordingly, we released our consultation, and this had some proposed 2024 amendments to the climate and assurance standards. These proposed amendments concern some suggestions or proposals to extend some adoption provisions within NZCS2, which is the standard for the adoption of Aotearoa New Zealand climate standards, and also to add an additional adoption provision for assurance. So the two that I wanted to talk to you about today are the two assurance-related proposals. So the first one was to extend the existing adoption provision within NZCS2 for the disclosure of Scope 3 emissions for 1 year. And the new adoption provision is to allow the assurance of greenhouse gas Scope 3 emissions to be delayed for 1 year. As I said earlier, this closed yesterday and we are currently analysing the feedback, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you that attended the drop-in sessions and provided submissions and feedback to us. These proposals, if they do go ahead, will need to be gazetted by the end of November, to be in law by the end of December. Next, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder about our greenhouse gas standard for the assurance of greenhouse gas disclosures within the climate statement. This became effective 4 days ago on the 27th of October. And we have been busy this year monitoring any use of the standard, any early adoption of the standard, and we have seen a couple of assurance reports that do reference our standard. But I also wanted to remind you about the deep dive assurance engagements over greenhouse gas disclosures that we have done if you would like any more information on this, and also to talk to you quickly about some staff guidance that we have issued. So this is implementation guidance for the standard and has covered the illustrative assurance reports for the standard, but also we are proposing to do some new guidance, and this will cover how to read the greenhouse gas assurance report, and also some guidance for preparers and assurance practitioners around guidance across Scope 3 emissions. And now I will hand over to Sharon to talk about public interest entities.
Excuse me, Sharon, you're on mute.
Excellent. I will start again. So I'm updating you today on our consultation on proposed amendments to the auditing standards for public interest entities. So just a reminder that we issued a consultation document earlier in the year, and that document proposed changes to the auditing standards to adopt the definition of public interest entity into the auditing standards, and also to expand the differential requirements that we have in the auditing standards from FMC reporting entities with higher public accountabilities to apply to all public interest entities. Now, why did we do this consultation? So internationally, the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board had been encouraged by stakeholders to clarify and align some of its terminology with the Ethics Board, particularly in terms of public interest entities, and also to expand the differential requirements beyond the requirement that is in their standards of listed entities. There had been calls for deposit takers and insurance providers to be captured within the differential requirements. Now, we needed to understand the impact of these proposals in New Zealand, in the New Zealand context, as our PI definition is considerably broader than the international. So just as a reminder, in New Zealand, the PI definition captures all entities that are required to report in accordance with the Tier 1 accounting criteria. So that includes for-profit and not-for-profit entities, or public benefit entities, capturing large public sector and large not-for-profits. Currently, the differential requirements in the auditing standards apply to a subset of those PIs, so it's only to the FMC reporting entities with higher public accountability. Now, I'd like to thank everybody who responded to us, took the time out to help us in that consultation. So what did we hear in response? We heard that at a conceptual level, it makes sense to use the same definition of public interest entity in both the auditing standards and in the ethics standards, but that there were considerable significant challenges. So we heard concerns about the increased cost of audit without a demonstrable benefit. We heard that size is a crude measure of what is actually public interest. And we heard that in the PBE space, it's different than in the for-profit space because funding providers are able to request additional information that they need from the entity. We also heard concerns about the impact on an already pressured labour market that imposing additional engagement quality review for all PIEs and auditor rotation requirements, the pressures that those additional requirements would have on the pool of auditors. We want to assure you that we heard your feedback and we took it to the NZAU ASB, to the August meeting, and the NZAU ASB has agreed in principle that current settings in New Zealand are fit for purpose. That means for independents, the broader provisions apply to PIEs, but that the differential requirements in the auditing standards should continue to apply to FMC reporting entities with higher public accountability. On the international front, we are monitoring the IAASB's activities as it comes to finalising this standard. We are expecting a final standard to be approved at the December meeting of the IAASB. In September, the IAASB considered an initial tranche of comments on its consultation, and based on those comments, it has agreed to restrict the expansion of the proposed differential requirements to public interest entities. So they have somewhat backtracked on the application of those differential requirements to PIEs. What it means is there is a marginal increase in scope at the international level from listed entity to publicly traded. And the IAASB took this decision because it did not, its view was that the PIE approach would not set a global baseline. And that's because under the Ethics Code, the approach recognises the crucial role of national standard setters to adjust the definition to suit local circumstances. So right now we are in a bit of a watch and see mode, but I want to assure you that we've heard your concerns. We'll see where the international standard lies, and once that position has been finalised, we will look at adoption in New Zealand. There will be some change to the standards, to our standards, as we adopt them. We're not quite sure what that will look like just yet, but that the current positioning is where we are aiming for. So watch this space. Next up, I am going to pass you back to Misha, who will provide some exciting information about what's coming out of the team in the next few weeks.
Great, thank you, Sharon. So pretend I'm Bruce, because I get to be Bruce for the day and give you a sneak peek about what we are hoping to launch next week, a consultation document and exposure draft of a ISA for less complex entities. So we were working really hard to try and launch this before our Need to Know, just not quite ready yet, but we are hoping to launch this consultation next week. So keep an eye open for an alert where you'll see the exact details in the actual consultation document. But I thought what I would do today is give you a little sneak peek about what this is all about. So what is the ISA for LCE, the less complex entities? The International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board has now issued a separate standalone auditing standard, which is proportionate and tailored specifically to the audits of less complex entities. It's key to understand in doing this, this standard still has all the necessary requirements to reach reasonable assurance. So it is providing the exact same level of assurance as an audit undertaken under the ISAs. But what it has done is it's recognized that the ISAs could be tailored and proportionate to the context of a less complex entity. The aim of this initiative is to promote consistent application of auditing principles in the audits of less complex entities as well as retain sort of a consistent approach globally, as there was a risk of fragmentation in the way in which audits of these less complex entities were going to be undertaken. So why are we looking at this? Well, in New Zealand, we have heard concerns over time around the increasing length and complexity of the auditing standards. We have heard concerns that these are really tailored to the highly regulated, the complex global conglomerate of listed companies, rather than necessarily designed with a number of the smaller, simpler entities in the New Zealand context that are either required by law, by their founding documents, or who voluntarily opt in to an audit of their financial statements. So what are some of the examples? I'm not saying all of these are less complex, but we suspect that a number of audits of schools, local charities, the local sports clubs, early childhood centres, these types of audits might actually be for audits of very less complex entities. So we believe that there might be an opportunity for a proportionate, tailored auditing separate standalone standard, which would be very useful for auditors in New Zealand. This is not the first time that we have come to you and sought views on whether this ISA for LCE would be useful for us. This project dates back to 2019, and we have submitted to the international project as well as surveyed, getting ready to make a decision as to whether or not New Zealand should adopt. Along this journey, we have heard mixed views. So we appreciate that not everybody's on the same page. We have heard strong support from some practitioners that they think this will be very useful. We have also heard contrary views with concerns around perception of a two-tier audit environment, concerns around how this will work in terms of moving between the standalone standard and the ISAs in due course, and others. So, what are we going to be asking you next? There are 3 questions which we are going to be seeking your views on in this consultation. The first is whether New Zealand should adopt the standard, given this mixture of views that probably still persists. So we're going to be asking a slightly different question this time. To date, we've asked whether you would support the adoption of the standard in New Zealand. I am aware that a number of the people on this webinar today are potential auditors or from firms that are auditing these less complex entities. And what we need to know from you now is, if we issued this, would you actually use it? There's a slightly different question from, do you support the introduction in the New Zealand context? We now need to know from you, if we were to introduce it, would you use it and when? So that's a key question for you to take away and ponder over potentially the summer holidays. The second question we're going to be asking for views around is, if we did introduce it, what are the necessary additional safeguards around when it could be used? Because it can't be used for all audits. There are already requirements baked into the international version, which prohibit its use in certain contexts. And we want to explore whether we need to add additional safeguards for the New Zealand context. The third area we'll seek your views on is around the audit of service performance information. This is the type of reporting which is very unique to New Zealand and is not covered by the International Auditing Standard. We believe that a number of the less complex entities which the standard may be useful for would actually need to report and have their service performance information audited as well. So we thought we would really be limiting the scope and applicability of the standard if we did not include a chapter on service performance information as well. So those are the 3 key areas that we want to seek your views on over the next couple of months. Hopefully we'll get this consultation document on our website next week. We will run a consultation over November, Christmas break. You'll have time to reflect on it. If you don't engage between now and that break, you'll also have an opportunity when you get back from your summer break to engage with us. So keep your eyes peeled. We'll be advertising a range of events, and we really do appreciate and encourage you all to drop us a note or share your views to help us make a final decision as to whether or not New Zealand should adopt this standard. Okay, so that's the ISA for LCE. So next project I want to give you a little bit of a sneak peek view of is some ongoing work that we have between both this is a cross external reporting board initiative, looking at both the reporting and audit of service performance information holistically. So why are we looking at this? Over the past couple of months, we have held some targeted workshops. We've had lots of conversations, and we are very much aware that both the reporting and audit of service performance information is new for many, and that there are some teething challenges. Through these workshops, what we have identified is some root cause concerns, which we are now pausing to think about. So what are these core challenges? What are these core root causes that we are hearing causing some problems? One, there is a need for more clarity. Clarity around the purpose of the statement of service performance, as well as some of the underlying concepts and terminology. Two, we've heard concerns around the capability and capacity in the not-for-profit sector. And three, we've heard concerns around verification of the service performance information, the increasing cost to audit, and the value of the audit over this information. So we really thank all of you who have contributed to our understanding of some of these root causes. We're doing a lot of head scratching and cross-team collaboration, and we are working at pace to come up with some detailed project plans, looking at standards as well as guidance. What are our guiding principles in developing these project plans? We need to ensure that we have information that enables accountability and transparency. We want to make sure that there is high quality information on which decisions can be made, that we recognize the need that this information needs to be trusted. There needs to be a high level of confidence in this information. Then balancing out the tensions between reporting and assurance, we need to be pragmatic. So thank you again for those who have contributed. If you have views or challenges or issues that you wish to talk to us about, please reach out. We are currently working through all of this to try and find a workable solution for everybody, and we will loop back to you in due course. So on that note, I'm going to now hand you over to Lisa, who's going to give you a little bit more detail on one of our projects we have been working on to develop a standard on the review of service performance information.
Yes, thanks, Misha. Good afternoon, everybody. As Misha just mentioned, this afternoon I'm going to give you an update on where we're at with the proposed review standard for service performance information. So firstly, just a quick recap on why we've developed this standard. So there's a statutory requirement for some entities to have either an audit or a review of their performance report, and this contains both financial and service performance information. So the standards currently issued by the External Reporting Board, the review standards, that covers the financial information component. However, there isn't a review standard specific for the service performance information. So what assurance practitioners are currently doing is they're doing review engagements that contain service performance information using the assurance standard for non-financial information, which is commonly known as 3000, and some guidance that we had issued on the audit or review of performance reports for Tier 3 not-for-profits, which you may know as EGA Unite. So because of the statutory requirement, we're expecting the main audience of this proposed standard to be insurance practitioners engaged to do reviews of Tier 3 charities. So therefore, it's those entities that we kept in mind when developing the standard. So what I mean by this is when we thought about what to include or exclude in the standard, we thought about the needs of an insurance practitioner doing a review engagement for a Tier 3 charity. So just a recap on some of the key features of the standard. So it's to be applied in conjunction with the review standard for financial information. Now, the two standards, they'll work together as a package so that there's an integrated approach to when reviewing both the general purpose report that contains both the financial information and the service performance information. And this is to recognise the link between these two types of information in the general purpose report. And it's also that the practitioner should have a single reviewer approach and be concurrently reviewing both the service performance information and the financial information. It's all a bit of a mouthful. So what does the standard cover? So it's specific for service performance information. So what we've put in it is the things that we thought are particularly relevant for service performance information, or maybe that due to the nature of service performance information, you may need a different approach than what you would use for financial information. And you may be aware that we've also recently revised the auditing standard for service performance information. So we've applied some of the lessons that we learned in that project to this, the development of this standard. And that includes the adoption of the term appropriate and meaningful, which has come from the financial reporting framework. This term has been recently adopted in the Tier 3 reporting requirements, so it just made sense to us to have the practitioner and the preparer speaking the same language. And we've also adopted the two-step approach, which you'll be familiar with from the auditing standard. What this requires is for the assurance practitioner to use their understanding to firstly consider whether the information reported is actually appropriate and meaningful. Essentially, what I'm saying is, first of all, you need to look at the what and the how of what has been reported. And this is done prior to obtaining evidence to determine whether anything has come to your attention that causes you to believe that the service performance may not reflect actual performance. So where are we at now? So we went out for consultation in April and this closed in July. So thanks very much to everyone who provided us with some feedback. We had a really well supported focus group attended by both preparers and practitioners and received a number of submissions. On the slide here, you'll see a link, and that will take you to the summary of the feedback that we received during the consultation, which is now available on our website. We've not only been considering the feedback from the consultation though, but also the wider feedback from the SPI workshops that Misha just spoke to you about earlier. So what did we hear? So overall, there was general support for the standard, which was great news. There was also support for the consistency with the reporting and the auditing standard. But this support came with acknowledgement that there's some difficulties currently being experienced, such as the interpretation of the term appropriate and meaningful. As I mentioned earlier, this term was adopted from the financial reporting framework and is also used in the auditing standard and the proposed review standard for service performance information. There were a couple of areas that respondents asked us to provide further clarity on. One of them was the use of other procedures and when they may be required. So what I mean by this is, like the review standard for financial information, the review standard for service performance information requires the practitioner to obtain evidence primarily through inquiry and analytical procedures, and when they consider necessary, other procedures due to the nature of service performance information. We were also asked to provide, to help drive consistency, we were asked to provide some guidance on what it means for when the practical application of what it means for when the practitioner has to consider the factors when doing an assessment of appropriate and meaningful. And this is in contrast to when they need to evaluate those factors, like is required for an audit. And as importantly, we're also considering some of those practical challenges that come out of those SPI workshops that we held. Things like how to apply the SPI standards in conjunction with the wider assurance requirements, in this case 2400. The maturity of the entity's internal controls and processes around the service performance information, and the verification of the information that's been reported. So we've discussed these issues at our recent board meetings, and we continue to consider them on how best to address them. with a view of seeking approval for the standard at our December meeting. So all going well, hopefully we'll have this, we anticipate to have this issued earlier in the new year. So thanks for your time. So I'll now pass you through to Karen.
Thank you, Lisa. And it's my pleasure to now take you through some changes and updates that we have made to our website. So the first one is for auditor responsibilities. So auditors are permitted to link to the relevant auditor responsibilities pages on our website by ISA 700, which is the standard that covers the forming an opinion and reporting on financial statements. And we do note that most auditors in New Zealand do this. Some of these responsibilities have been amended by the recently issued group standard, ISA NZ 600, and the standard on service performance information, NZAS 1. So correspondingly, we have updated our auditor's responsibilities page, or refreshed our auditor's responsibilities page, to add new pages that contain the responsibilities as amended by these two standards. So what does this mean? So this means that auditors will need to update the links in their auditor reports when applying these revised standards. But I want to reiterate that the links to the current responsibilities pages, so any links that you have used in audit reports so far, have not and will not change. So those links will still work. However, if you are applying any of these new standards, you must update your audit report template with the new link. We've also taken the opportunity to add responsibilities for when an auditor is auditing a general purpose compliance framework, such as the Tier 4 PBE reporting standard, and responsibilities for auditing a special purpose framework in accordance with NZIA ISA 800 revised. So I thought it might be useful to run through a quick example of how the new page looks. So on the screen now is an example of not a group audit report that does include service performance information. And as you will see, it's relatively easy to select the drop downs to get to the audit report, and then each audit report is numbered, and then the link will include the number in the audit report. So just a final reminder on the next slide, please, Sharon, for modified assurance reports. So this is just a reminder that auditors are required to file modified audit reports and financial statements to the XRB. And they will also be they're required under Section 207C of the Companies Act and under the Financial Markets Conduct Act and also the Incorporated Societies Act. They will be required to file modified assurance reports over greenhouse gas disclosures and climate statements as well. And this is just a reminder of how to do that on our website. So process relatively simple, sign up to our website, and then there is a form to complete for each report being submitted. And if you could please also upload the PDF documents at the same time. So I'd just like to thank you for joining us and hand over to Misha to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, so thanks again for joining us today. We do have a couple of minutes for questions if you do have any. So feel free to drop those in the chat or in the Q&A. I think there's two places we can monitor those. Again, just to reiterate that both the recording and the slides of today's session will be available on our website following this webinar. So if you did join late, you're able to go back and watch the sections that you might have missed. I'll just wait a second. I don't see any questions or comments in the chat. So yes, just thank you to the team and thank you to you all. Oh, we've got a hand raised. Is there a question, Louise, that you wish to raise? as a webinar, you might not be able to we might not all be able to hear you, so it might be easier to put something in the chat. Yeah, I'm trying to unmute you, and I think the settings in the webinar don't allow participants to communicate. But if there is anything, here we go. I've got a Q&A. No, all good. Thanks, Louise. Okay, auditor's responsibilities link. The question is, do these include audit reports under ISA 800? So to my knowledge, what we've done is historically we've focused on sort of more the traditional audits, the full audit approach, but we have added a couple of extra sort of options to choose between special purpose or others. If you have a concern or if you think we are missing anything, please do have a look, see what's there, and drop us a note if you think that we have missed something. We are striking the balance between trying not to create thousands of these things, but at the same time also wanting to make sure we've got all the relevant links that you might need. So have a look at what's there, and if you think that they've missed something, please do let us know. You can drop us an email on the email address shown on the screen. Okay. Don't see any other questions coming through. So I think we'll wrap up now. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will look forward to updating you in due course. Have a great day.